We're going to start off today with a question, just to kind of see what you know. It's no pressure here. I want you to choose the option that you think correctly answers that question. Who has made terrorist attacks in the Holy Land? Muslims, Jews, or Muslims and Jews? Take 15 seconds out of that 30-second timer. All right, and the correct answer is the one picked by, in this case, a majority, Muslims and Jews. Both committed acts of terrorism in the Holy Land. So let's get to that and find out why that is the correct answer. And what we're going to be focused on today is how it was that the Zionism we learned about yesterday led to violent conflict in the Holy Land. To do that, we need to work some more on that first objective, understanding the background for the conflict. The background is something called British Mandate Palestine. It's a place. It is the territory we now call Israel. It was called British Mandate Palestine after World War I. After World War I, there was an organization called the League of Nations. You're going to learn more about it in U.S. history, so I'm not going to say a whole lot right now. The League of Nations was kind of like the United Nations today. And one of the things the League did was it looked at pieces of territory that maybe used to belong to somebody, maybe had some particular problems, and they gave powerful countries a mandate, which is kind of like an order or authority over those territories. In this case, Palestine went to the British. Palestine, or today's Israel, is this very, really small piece of territory in global perspective, right at the eastern end of the Mediterranean, kind of where Africa meets Southwest Asia, and also close to Europe. And in this territory, prior to Zionism, there were only about 20,000 Jews in Palestine. That may still seem like a lot. We're thinking about a small piece of territory. But after the influence of Zionism has had some time to work, that number goes up by more than 600% to 150,000 in 1933. And as this is happening, Jews influenced by Zionism and the Arabs, who had been the majority in Palestine, both want control of the territory. And both launched rebellions against the British to try to get it. Marky, let's do this thing. The Arabs launched their rebellion first, 1936 to 1939. This was a pretty good time to launch a rebellion. The British are becoming increasingly worried about Nazi Germany. So the Arabs might have thought this was a good time while the Brits are distracted to make a fuss and get independence. There you go. You're welcome. And the Arabs wanted two things, right? One, as we've already said, they wanted control of Palestine. They wanted their independence. They are also wanting more immediately an end to Jewish immigration into Palestine. they're watching the number of Jews in Palestine grow and grow and grow rapidly. Their rebellion does not succeed. The Jews will launch their rebellion second in 1944 to 1948. Okay. And they want, on one hand, the same thing. Right? They want a state. They want an independent Palestine. And they want it under Jewish control rather than Arab control, but the goal is the same. What is very much the opposite is they want more Jewish immigration into Israel. Again, same thing. We've got kind of a sense of timing. 1944, the British are part of the Allies that are starting to really beat the Nazis, but the war isn't over yet. A lot of the fiercest fighting is still in the future, and so this is another good time. The Brits are distracted, make your move for independence. But there's another reason in 1944 that the Jews particularly wanted more immigration into Palestine. What was going on in 1944 that would make them want to escape to Israel? Anybody venture a guess? What was happening to the Jews during World War II? The Holocaust, right? Exactly. Thank you, Jaden Frisbee. The Holocaust. And so there's an opportunity, but there's also a desperate need for Jews to find some place to escape to. A lot of them had tried to come to the United States. The president of the United States said, no, you can't come here, and sent them back to Europe to die at the hands of the Nazis. So they needed a safe place. They wanted that place to be Israel. So let's look at their rebellion. Another word for rebellion that's more often used today is an insurgency. The Zionists did rebel. They also did use terrorism. Again, that conflict takes place between 44 and 48. And a big part of it, again, is to fight to keep Palestine open to Jews trying to get away from Europe. Because as Jaden has pointed out, in Europe, Jews faced the Holocaust. They were escaping. They were escaping in these heavily loaded down ships, leaving from Europe, trying to escape to Israel. And so part of the rebellion wasn't just on land. Although, a lot of our images, kind of the iconic images, are of Jewish, in many cases, and those two images, particularly female soldiers fighting against the British, but some of it was also done at sea to make sure that these ships could get past the British Navy to Israel, or at that time still Palestine. The terrorism comes in with some of the other strategies of the Jewish rebels. They bombed British targets, including hotels where British leaders and soldiers and police were living. They also assassinated people who were part of the British government. And for lower level people like British soldiers and police, they tried to kind of terrorize them by kidnapping the soldiers and police and then beating them. Of course, things like bombings, assassinations, and kidnappings are still part of terrorist strategies today. In response to this violence, an organization called the United Nations had a solution. If you're wondering what's this United Nations business, is it the League of Nations? No, it's not. You're going to learn more about the United Nations also in your U.S. history class. So all I'm going to say about it is it replaced the League of Nations. The League of Nations died with World War II. The United Nations is its replacement, led by the United States. And the solution from the UN is, hey, you know what? We'll create two states out of Palestine. There will be an Arab state that's going to be the part shaded in yellow, and a Jewish state, the part shaded in orange. At this point, we don't really talk about the Arabs in Palestine as Palestinians, just Arabs who lived in Palestine, like Arabs who lived in Jordan or Egypt. And as the UN is putting forward this two-state solution, the Brits are getting out. 1948, the Brits have been part of the winning side of World War II, but you wouldn't necessarily know it from visiting Britain. The country is broke. There are shortages of everything. The government has to control the supply to try and keep people fed and to keep the lights on. So the Brits are on their way out. And with that, the state of Israel as a sovereign state comes into being in 1948. And if you were expecting that was a happily ever after kind of ending, it's not. Pretty much immediately there is a war as the British are leaving. And that is the Arab-Israeli War of 1948. And what they're fighting for? Well, neither one of them wants just part of Palestine. They want the whole thing. And I'm going to guess, even though you are a room full of high school students and not a room full of geographers, I'm going to guess Adele can kind of look at that map and guess there's going to be trouble. You've got these like disconnected bits of the Jewish state, and then you've got kind of the Arab state where all of the pieces technically are touching. Right, so they kind of have a single piece of territory, but right, it's kind of pinched here between parts of the Jewish state, there and there. And as you might imagine, the Jewish state is not at all happy about not having a single piece of territory that works the whole way around. And also, nobody's getting Jerusalem. The UN has kind of done what Saladin did after winning in the Crusades. Let's hope that comes back. Okay. Maybe. Just as Saladin had controlled Jerusalem and kind of left it open to Muslims and Christians and Jews, now the United Nations is going to control Jerusalem and try and keep it open to everybody. Now, I know some of you would love to have more details about the war, but we aren't going to get into those. We're just going to point out that it was not a sure thing that Israel would win, but in 1948, Israel does win, which would show up on the screen if the screen wasn't doing that. Let's. All right, there we go. Israel wins in 1948. And so here's kind of what the map looks like. This was the situation in 1946 before the UN's big idea. All right. Jews in Palestine only control these little blobs of territory. The rest is controlled by the Palestinian Arabs. We get the UN's plan. And then after the war, the state of Israel, the Jewish state, controls all of this, and the Palestinian Arabs are pushed on to these two pieces of land. This one still referred to as the Gaza Strip. So we can tell already at this point they control a majority of the territory. And what this results in is 500,000, more than 500,000 Palestinians are forced to become refugees and leave their homes. Yes, Isaac. You may. And importantly, what we see is that Israel captures and holds on to Jerusalem. Right, just barely, but they've got it. In talking about Jerusalem, and don't say anything out loud, to which three groups, I will give you that hint, three religious groups, is Jerusalem considered a holy city? And Isaac, there should be a pass laying up there on the desk.